Welcome, everyone. I am thrilled to have with us today from Ameriprise, Pat O'Connell. And Pat, I'm going to read your title right. Executive Vice President, Ameriprise Advisor Group and Ameriprise Financial Institutions Group. So that's it's quite a mouthful. That's pretty good. So glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Right. And just so everyone's clear, people know who you are, but you're, Ameriprise has a couple of different channels, and your channel is the employee channel, we would call it, or how would we say it?
Yeah, so I have the responsibility, Tony, of working with a couple thousand of our advisors across now two channels. One is our branch business, and a few years ago, we also started a financial institutions business with advisors working in community banks. So the branch business has been a labor of love for the last decade or so, and the financial institutions business for the last couple of years.
That's great. That's great. Well, then, this has been a crazy time. So you've been doing this for a while, but if we were to dial back, we were doing this having this conversation a year ago. I don't think you and I would have guessed that this is where we would be, waiting for a vaccine in our houses. Look, in general, I've talked to a lot of CEOs on this program. I mean, how has it gone? Obviously, it took us all by surprise, but how did it start, and what was surprising on a positive side for you? What was surprising kind of on a negative side?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. If it was a year ago, we'd probably be, in your New York office or my New York office or someplace else in suits and ties and not talking to each other from our home offices. But no, it's been a challenging year, a unique year. But Ameriprise and our advisors, most of our clients are doing well. And I mean, as everybody knows, I think it was Friday, March 13th is when kind of everything started to move very quickly. And we made the decision to, move everybody to working from home. And, within 48 hours, we really had invested aggressively in our tools and our technology and our platforms and everything else. And boy, everything got a really significant stress test quickly. And I mean, we just moved everybody, like I said, within 48 hours to working from home. And it's you never say it's seamless, but it has gone exceptionally well. And we've probably made, 7 to 10 years of progress with the use of technology.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In the 9 months that we've been, in this environment.
Yeah, I would say for sure things have accelerated, much more because we've been forced to. And what's crazy is, in my mind, is the adaptability. You guys have done really well with like recruiting and sort of moving forward. And had we been talking in March, my prediction in the beginning was it's going to slow down. It's going to have a negative impact. But, people are doing their thing. They're finding a way to succeed and to move in this environment.
Yeah, again, this is, if you would have said, here's everything you're going to face back on January 1st, and you think recruiting, for example, is going to be up year over year, I would have thought that would be difficult. But the reality is we are up year over year. And it's always great to talk about the tools and the technology and the investments have been made. And they have been significant, like hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to do what we've been able to do. Because, in the past, it would take, we used to call them war rooms, right? When an advisor would decide to change firms, you'd have 10, 15, 20 people in a room working on this. Well, that just physically wouldn't have been possible. But over the last couple of years, that group of people has come down to, now it was 2 or 3, and now it can all be done remotely. But it still does come down to, Tony, you know this, right? It comes down to, can you execute well? And can you get people, whether they're physically together or spread out, can they execute successfully? And you need the technology to do it, and it was in place for us to do it. But the execution's really been very strong.
Well, if I was a bet, I would bet that you never hire an advisor your firm that you didn't meet or take out for lunch or dinner or something like that personally, right? And then now you're doing it virtual.
It's you're absolutely right. I mean, this has always been. I started as an advisor 28 years ago. This has always been a face-to-face business. And like I said, we've hired more people this year than we did last, and last year was a good year. And a lot of that's been screen-to-screen work. So we've just had to adjust.
So we're speaking of adjustments, our industry as a whole, you're in a unique spot, because, and also you get to hear from the other channels, and, it's obviously Ameriprise is a big firm. So, a little bit like me, you get to hear a little bit of everything, especially as you meet advisors. So some of this acceleration in technology, which is going to be good, and some stuff's going to, decelerate too, right? The technology things that may have been, not working terrifically well, prior to all this, those things are going to decelerate. What do you think we're going to keep with us, going forward as an industry, not necessarily specific to Ameriprise, but what do you think as an industry we're going to say, moving forward into 2021? Now it looks like the summer, fall, but what are we going to keep with us? What are some of the good pieces of what's going on here?
Yeah, I think that's a conversation we have, inside the organization, talk to advisors and leaders about it. I mean, I think time will tell, but what I will say is, I think if you look at where we are right now, where the vast majority of things are being done remotely, and prior to March, it was all being done face to face. I think fast forward a year or two from now, it's, you're somewhere with a hybrid approach, probably somewhere in the middle. But I think what sticks is there's a way now to interface with clients, especially more affluent clients, high net worth clients, in a way that just simply wasn't being leveraged that much. And you can leverage this approach now to deliver a consistent client experience. And that, in our opinion, that's ultimately what differentiates the advisor in the marketplace, right? Is that client experience. And I think that's what, for advisors that really embrace the technology and then just give their clients the simple guidance on how to use it. I think, Tony, that's what will absolutely stick well beyond this pandemic. And, sometimes we used to think that the technology was good for the 20, 30, 40-year-olds. I think it works for all clients now marching forward. They're just used to it.
I wrote this article, which I'm sure you read all my stuff, but it was about how a 3-year-old is going to change our business, meaning that these, greatest generation and baby boomers are 75, 80 years old. They're agnostic, vis-a-vis technology. They're not taking Instagram pictures of their food necessarily and posting it. But if they want to see their grandkids, they're learning how to do Zoom. And if it's good enough for their
grandkids, on technology.
Yeah, it's going to be good enough for you, my advisor, and my lawyer. And they're seeing their doctor. We had at our event, we had that. Oh my goodness, it's terrible. I'm spacing her name, but she was Surgeon General of the Army, and now people are doing all of these things, remotely. You're able to see your doctor remotely. So for some of that, there is no going back. Now that clients have the convenience of this, it's a 24-hour job.
Yeah. Tony, just one other point on that is I talk to advisors all the time about it. I think clients and prospective clients are, they don't sometimes outwardly come out and ask the question, but they ask 2 questions all the time, right? What makes the advisor different, right? And then why do they do business with somebody, or why are they choosing to do business with somebody different? And I think for advisors, you have to ask yourself those same 2 questions, right? What makes you different? And why do people do business with you? And why do new clients look to do business with you? And I think what you're talking about with the use of technology and being able to connect this way, I think in the marketplace, it's going to be something that is so important, like I said, for all clients.
Yeah.
But especially for your more affluent, high net worth clients, they're going to want to interface with you anytime, from any device, from anywhere, and that's what technology delivers.
Yeah. So in my mind, in 2021, advisors who embrace technology, obviously they're going to perform better than ones who don't. But we've also had these crazy markets, and that's been influenced, by technology. Now, look, the markets have been more or less, done well, considering they've been bouncing around. People are concerned about them, but the advisors who have done it seems to me, and I'll say the premise, and you tell me if you agree. But it seems to me that the advisors who have done well, who have given real advice, versus folks who have relied on this, this boom market to sort of inflate their books and leave their clients alone. Those guys are going to be in trouble when the markets start to go down. The emperor's not going to have any clothes at some point, and the advisors that haven't done the hard work are going to feel it.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's an interesting thing with and you've been in the business a long time. I've been in the business a long time, and everybody that's watching this is, for the most part, been in the business for a long period of time. And you have these periods of time like March of this year or the end of 2018, or it's just a litany of disasters over the last 20, 30, 40 years you can point to, but they're short-term issues. The interesting thing with really focusing on the experience and a service model and using technology, it's one thing to be face-to-face with clients, and that's always, to me, the best way. But sometimes this has forced us where we can't do that. But the use of technology, clients benefit from seeing you, right? And seeing your, not just your verbal, but your nonverbals.
Yeah.
And especially in the most difficult markets when there's chaos out there, like I said, face-to-face is the best, but at least in a setting like this, a client can see you and candidly see that you're focused and giving them leadership and direction. And so I think this technology matters all the time, but we'll be back in a period of time where there's lots of instability and lots of volatility in the markets. And that's where I think the technology, again, gives you the chance to just connect with people and have them see you and hear you.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because in my mind, I'm just going to reinvent what you're saying here. You're saying that the technology that sort of enhances our humanity is this thing that's going to push us forward a little bit, which I tend to agree with, because our business is such a relationship, business. And that's really what we have. Advisors are worried, and we were worried 2 years ago about robo-advising, and we were really disconnected from this millennial generation and all that sort of thing. And this seems to have maybe accelerated, not a disconnect, but maybe more of a connection, because we're embracing this sort of technology where we can see each other's faces. I mean, we're having a real conversation. I'm seeing whether you're agitated or not, right? You're seeing whether I've had too many drinks. It's 4:30. So we're all trying to, work together. But I think that the idea that advice is the one thing that's not going to go away. There's been commissions are going to zero. All these other things are happening. But if we keep the relationship and make the relationship about advice, that's what's going to take us long term, or let this business survive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in our business that can be commoditized.
Right.
If all you do is asset allocate portfolios and pick securities and rebalance portfolios, the pricing on that is going to be under pressure. And it's been under pressure for 30 years, 40 years, right? But if there's more that you deliver, and there's so much more that a really good advisor delivers to a client than just that, then that pricing, right, can be sustained during the good times, and also, and I've seen this during the more challenging times. I'll give you an example. This has been a year for us where we've had record organic inflows. Again, back to what you asked earlier, with all we face this year, what I expected this year to be a record year for inflows. If you said that to me on January 1st, no. But the reality is, we talk tools and technology and platforms, but again, it's engaging the client and how you engage that client consistently. We've seen that really pay dividends for the firm and for the advisors, and again, most importantly, for the clients.
Yeah, it's the good traits that we always learned years ago as advisors that are actually paying off. And I'm hearing, and from what you're saying, you're seeing in your firm too. But good advisors are all over this opportunity. I mean, they're talking to people via Zoom, in different states and far away that they wouldn't have met before. And they're keeping up the sort of connectivity with their clients that they didn't have before. And that's a psychological element that, good advisors have, with their clients. It's a hard to explain to somebody who's not in the business, but that's been enhanced during this sort of very crazy time as well.
I think that's where, and you mentioned earlier about recruiting, but again, we've seen it from our advisors. I've seen it from recruiting. I mean, I've seen me individually, right? I used to see so many people in New York and Minneapolis. I've seen 5 times the amount of advisors this year than I saw in years past. Recruiting wise, same thing on the organic side of the business. And that's the same thing for advisors, because it's also an efficiency play. Because I talked to an advisor last week who's seeing 30% more clients every week because their client service model is just more efficient.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of what we learned 20, 30 years ago really applies today. And it requires you to actually leverage, right, an end-to-end client experience and the technology to bring that to life and deliver consistently. That's what I've seen real life deliver just really strong results.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be, if not one of the major takeaways from this COVID stuff, because I've been, you'd say 30 years ago, actually been in the business 30 years ago, I've never seen commissions go up in all that time. They've only gone down. So the one thing that has remained consistent, is advice. Now we've switched it around. You need more assets, more this. But I think having people rely on us during this crisis has been a boon to our industry, long term. We've at least cemented with those people.
I agree. I also would be remiss if saying I'm also, because maybe it is, now being old school a bit. I got 180 offices nationally. I can't wait to go out and just shake people's hand, say hello, thank them, just get face to face with people. I mean, the good news is I think we're now seeing that's not that far around the corner. And I think I'm like the vast majority of people. I love the technology, but boy, I can't wait to go see.
We're social animals. We wouldn't be in this business, if we weren't. But look, we've got some challenges too in the marketplace coming up, and just wondering, what you're hearing, what the advisors are saying. We have maybe for the first time in the last 8-10 years, you start hearing about political issues, in America, affecting stocks and bonds and investing. And we have, perhaps a change of the guard where there's going to be a different tax structure, stepped up cost bases and, capital gains taxes. There's things that people, we're, again, dead center. Our business is right in the middle and our clients are concerned. What are you hearing in the field? What's Ameriprise feeling is going to happen over the next, from a market perspective, and maybe a little advice for advisors throughout that?
Yeah, I think, listen, everybody's living the same reality that I am right now, and that it's a unique period of time. There's lots of change occurring, and I don't know. As we look forward to 2021, we feel optimistic as an organization. We feel as an organization we're well positioned, but we also feel our country's amazingly resilient. And you're absolutely right. I mean, my advice to advisors would be is focus on what your real value proposition is. It's part of what you do is security selection and asset allocation and things like that. But whether you talk about tax law changes or political changes or market instability, advice, right, is going to be a big thing that people need now and by all means in the future. So that's been just a big focus of ours over the years. And I think whether it's Ameriprise advisors or advisors at other firms, to me, I think that's a core part of what differentiates you in the marketplace, whether it's from a robo offering or from something a large bank would offer, or anything else. That personalized advice to help people with their own situations react to some of those bigger issues and proactively plan for those different changes that can occur. I think that's a big differentiator for advisors in the marketplace.
Advisors, no question, advisors have to be educated, now more than ever. They got to get themselves educated so they can reasonably answer a question, because, people are going to be concerned. And some of the stuff, as you mentioned too, we don't have an answer. We're not necessarily, and there's not necessarily even a right or wrong. It's just, let's deal with the situation as it comes up as regards to, investing. It's just going to be that kind of situation.
I think you're right. I think sometimes it's risky for advisors. Listen, when I was an advisor for almost 7 years, I used to say to my clients, I'm not in the crystal ball business, right? So I don't necessarily predict the weather, right? I react to changes that occur, but have a good plan in place so we're okay regardless. Right. And I think that's that was good back in the 90s. I think it still applies today, is that planning and advice and a comprehensive approach still matters. And that stability can help clients through the most unsettling times.
That's great. That's great advice. One thing that I think about, I hear from, and this is sort of semi-COVID related, but how are we going to sort of move forward, and just thoughts on what you're thinking about it. Real estate. So there's sort of two perspectives. One is, I've talked to CEOs that were, getting 80,000 square feet on Park Avenue, New York, literally like ready to sign a lease. Then come March, April, May, June, now they're looking at maybe 30,000 square feet. People are going to work from home. So I would actually make this a two-part question. One would be, where do you see real estate in our business going? And even taking a look at the RIA side, where you have, maybe people are not getting the same Eagle Barn type offices that they were going to get, and they're getting a smaller office, or maybe a nice meeting room with some, sort of sales desks around it. And then the part two of that question would be productivity. What are you seeing productivity wise? Because you've got a whole staff, you've got marketing people, you have all this other stuff. What are you seeing productivity wise during this sort of new way of doing business?
I think it's good. It's an interesting question, and
Yeah.
I think from a use of space, I think sometimes we got to be careful that as good as this year has been, I think everybody, especially in our business, would agree we wouldn't want to operate on this in this way forever, right? That there's got to be an opportunity, and there's clearly can be more productive long term being together. I do think, especially with the larger corporate footprints, we'll see that over time, come down. There's just some very good ways, creative ways to share space. I think at a branch level, so in one of the platforms I'm responsible for, we got a couple thousand advisors, like I said, 180 offices, and there's some real benefit, right? Idea sharing, best practices, camaraderie of having people together. But I think you do have to have some flexibility over time, and be nimble and be willing to adjust what that space looks like. But I right now, I'm not in a spot where I say, well, let's just whipsaw and go one way versus on the last 9 months versus the other, because I think we're all going to find once we get beyond this pandemic that not only for us, right, in the industry, but for our clients, we're still going to have a lot of reasons to meet with clients face to face that will benefit them and benefit us. So I think right now, I guess the best message I'd say is be mindful of the landscape, be flexible. And I think it will be different based on, are you trying to lay out a space for 5,000 people or for 500 people versus are you trying to have a space for 5, 10, 15, 30 people, how you think about that space. And by all means, we are looking at it very closely. I'm doing a lot more listening than I am talking right now, just to get people's perspectives and ideas, both from leaders and from advisors. And then we'll just, be mindful and adjust as we go. I think that flexibility is going to be important.
I have 4 kids, 4 daughters, and 2 of them are young. They graduated within the last 2 years. So one of them graduated last year, went to work for 4 months, and then now has been home straight through. And it based on what you were saying, it's interesting. When I look back when I was a starting broker, how much I learned from being in a branch and just being around, more experienced advisors, being able to ask questions. It's so valuable. And for all young people coming in, it's so hard to be in business and not have to be able to go to lunch with somebody or ask a question or have mentors or just grow without being in an office. You really can't.
Tony, I think about it right now, and I think sometimes we just discount this, but you've been in the business a long time. I'm almost 30 years in the business, and I just think about my own base is New York City and Minneapolis, and the amount of times almost 30 years in the business where I'll walk down the hallway and say to one of my colleagues, right? It might be our CEO, it might be my boss, our CEO and chairman, or our head of HR, something like that. Hey, you got a minute, right? And we'll brainstorm for 5 or 10 minutes about something, and that's invaluable, right? And the same thing happens every day whether it's an office with 5 people in it or an office with 50 people in it. So like I said, this year has been, I think we've learned a lot as an advisory business. I think the industry's learned a lot. But I also think the vast majority of people say beyond this, there's a middle ground here because there's a real benefit of some of that just quick interaction. Those learnings are invaluable.
Yeah, no question about it. And, I had a wonderful branch experience, doing it when I started as a broker. It was really the way to go. Hey, I want to give everybody a chance to hear if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about, because we're at about 25 minutes or so. And I want to let people be able to listen to this in their car or whatever. Anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about?
No, first of all, Tony, thanks so much for having me on. I'm glad I had a chance to do it. And no, most importantly, I wish everyone a wonderful holiday season. Most importantly, stay safe. And I think I would just close by saying, your clients, sometimes we call it advice, sometimes we call it counsel, but ultimately your clients are paying you for your leadership, right? So that's what makes the difference. And that leadership is ultimately what helps clients achieve their financial goals. So I hope everybody has a very restful and safe holiday season and can recharge so you can go back and serve clients again in 2021.
Great message, Pat. We'll do this again some point during the year. So thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Look forward to it. Take care.